Hello, everyone. I'm Harvey Brownstone, and today I'm delighted to welcome a powerhouse couple whose first Hollywood collaboration has won them an Emmy nomination. He is a director and producer best known for such films as Back from the Dead, Gearheads, Class Act, Land of the Free, and Space Command. She is a prolific, best-selling, award-winning novelist in numerous genres, including romance, gothic, mystery, and paranormal. Most recently, this creative team wrote, produced, and directed Rekindling Christmas, a TV movie nominated for Outstanding Daytime Fiction. I'm so pleased to welcome James Ganiere and Rebekah R. Ganiere to our show. James and Rebekah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Harvey, for having us.
Thank you, Harvey.
First of all, congratulations on the Emmy nomination. I think it's amazing that your very first film landed you a nomination for an Emmy.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I got a chance to watch Rekindling Christmas the other night. It's a fantasy family romance about relationships, miscommunications, forgiveness, figuring out what really matters in life. And it's based on Rebekah's book. And you also wrote the screenplay, Rebekah. I absolutely loved it.
Thank you very much. Yes, I did write the screenplay based off the book of the same name, Rekindling Christmas. It was a lot of fun.
Was it difficult to convert your novel into a screenplay? I mean, isn't that a completely different skill set than writing a novel?
It is a completely different skill set, and it takes a lot of classes. At one point, I was taking both writing classes and screenplay classes at the same time, and I said, I can't do this. I keep getting it all mixed up. Plot points are supposed to be in different places, and certain acts are supposed to be longer in one than the other, and so it was really messing me up. So I had to stop doing that, and I put screenwriting aside for a little bit while I focused on my novels and stuff. And then I went back and slowly started doing more screenplay classes again. This book was actually easy to be able to adapt into a screenplay because it's pretty straightforward. There really weren't any extra plots, sidelines, side characters with their own stories, things like that. So making it into a script was pretty easy. Some of my other ones that I've made into screenplays, a little bit more difficult because there's so many other plots in there, and you really have to figure out what you're going to weed out to, fit into that 90 page to 110 page space of a, 300-400 page novel.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about this is very, very few authors can make the jump from writing great novels to writing great screenplays. In fact, most reps or production companies, when they hear that an author wrote the screenplay, they kind of like cringe on the inside, and they're like, oh, great. And so for Rebekah, on her first screenplay, to have it be nominated just isn't a testament to how phenomenal of a writer she is and how versatile to be able to write both novels extremely well and also screenplays.
I think it's phenomenal. I want to know, Rebekah, what's it like to write the story and have the vision playing in your head all the time and then finally see it on the screen? Was the finished product what you expected?
It was better than I expected, to be quite honest. There's so much that went into it. When I write, I see it. Even when I write books, I see it in my head as a movie. So I already know what the costumes look like, what the actors look like, what the settings look like, all of it. Translating that into a movie is very difficult a lot of times because it's not always the way you imagined it. But a lot of what we ended up with in Rekindling Christmas was more beautiful and amazing than I expected it to turn out. So I was very, very happy. I also happened to be the production designer on it. So I got to make a lot of those choices as to what things look like, which made me very happy.
You two are just amazing. And James, you directed the film, and one of the stars is your son, Christian. What's it like to direct your own son?
Wow, so that's a big question. So, we've been able to watch him and be with his career, kind of his whole career, and see all that, but never directing him, but seeing how other people directed him. So there's this, I knew he had so much more ability than what was being tapped, even though he's absolutely amazing on these incredible, Emmy-winning TV shows and films and that. But I knew he had more in the tank. I knew he had more muscles there to stretch. But then there's the thing of I'm his dad. So there's that extra layer of you're asking something of him, not just as a director, but also he sees you as his dad. And so there's that little part that I have to overcome on there. But I got to tell you, Rebekah really wrote an amazing part for him to kind of, stretch in that. And in not just this film, but the next film, No More Goodbyes. And it was really awesome to kind of work all together for the first time. So being able to work with Christian and direct him, and to also have him, reach and see these different emotions that maybe he hasn't had an opportunity to in some of the other roles was rewarding on multiple levels.
Do the other three kids want to get into acting as well?
Our three daughters actually used to act. Our older three daughters, Christian's the youngest, they got into it first. He was almost 6 months old, and his agent said, yeah, we'll take him too. And they worked a lot. They used to do a lot. But our oldest daughter, her heart has always really been in dance. So she left and went back to dance. She's a ballerina in modern dance. And then our second daughter, Brianna, she had fun doing it, but it wasn't really her thing. So she just is a freshman in college now, and she's in game design, and she's really into gaming. And then Angel, our 16-year-old, she just kind of decided, you know what, I'm burnt out. I'm done. She used to be at Disney every week. She worked all the time. And the one summer it was nonstop. And after that, she was just like, I need a break. And then after the break, she just kind of said, I love to pursue art and drawing and my violin. And we said, okay. So that's what she's decided she wants to do.
But I think Christian is going to be different. This child has a gift, and he manages to convey and emote so naturally in front of the camera. I hope he continues with it.
He really wants to. It's the one thing that really lights a fire under him for anything that, he's, you have to practice and do these things if you want to keep acting. Okay. You have to clean your face and brush your teeth and do all these things if you want to keep it. Okay. So it's one of the things that he really is very passionate about, and he takes very seriously. From the time he was very young, 4 years old, he was with Grace Studios, and his teacher who owned the studio would go into his adult class and say, I have a 4-year-old that can do this stuff, that listens better than you adults. Because he was just, when he's on, and he's ultra focused, and he doesn't like to be sidetracked. It's his job, and he takes it very seriously. And he's very good at it because he really does want to do the best he absolutely can.
It's the only thing that he's willing to sacrifice all the other things. So, because early on, he really loved parkour, and he was getting frustrated because he was missing classes because he was, busy working in that. And we said, hey, listen, it's up to you, but you need to decide what is first priority. And whatever is first priority, you have to sacrifice what's in second, third, and fourth priority. So you tell us what is your first priority. And he said acting. And after that, he never complained about missing parkour classes because he had made the decision. It's what he wanted on there. And we've always put our kids in the driver's seat when it comes to, what they want to do and career-wise and all of that.
I'm really impressed with that, because I think if the parents have a balanced approach and make sure that their child is actually having a real childhood and isn't exposed to inappropriateness in terms of behavior in the industry, it can be very successful, and he can grow up a well-balanced, happy individual, which is what every parent wants.
Absolutely.
And there's a difference. If you look back at child stars who have grown up, probably the best example would be Ron Howard and his parents, and some of the experiences that they had with Ron. And Ron's actually, has told those, and how his parents wouldn't let him get away with anything. and they were making sure that, he was extremely well-rounded.
Well, and the cast is so well chosen in this film. I really loved Stella Mae Grubb, who played Lizzie. She's only 10 years old, but she's already a seasoned veteran because she was in Dolly Parton's movie Christmas on the Square, which aired on Netflix. She did a wonderful job in the film, didn't she?
She was amazing. She was a hard find for us because the role had originally been written for my youngest daughter, Angelina, who's now 16. And so I really needed whoever played Lizzie to have the kind of energy that our daughter Angel has. Just this fun, spunky, but not too, edgy, not really, a little precocious, but not annoying.
Yeah.
And not obnoxious.
Exactly. Yes. It just, a sweet demeanor, and it just had to be right. And we couldn't quite find that. I think we were maybe 3 to 5 days out from the beginning of shooting when we finally found her and said, that's her.
Oh yeah. Cause there was 2 people that, Rebekah's like, you got to choose one. And I was like, they're both good, but they're not that one. I think we should keep on looking. And she's like, James, you got to make a decision. I was like, and at that time, she'd only done the Dolly Parton Christmas, but there was no reel for her. So she was undiscovered really at that point, and ended up finding her. And the instant that we saw her tape, we both looked at each other and it's like, she's Lizzie. She's Lizzie. And it was done. And it literally was days before we were supposed to be shooting.
The thing that surprises me, James, about you is that any director that I've interviewed, and I've had quite a few on my show, will tell you that directing children is a very different skill than directing adults. And putting aside that one of them is your own child and you've got that whole dynamic there that you have to move beyond, you managed to get performances out of these kids that are so believable but not obnoxious. It's really quite a reflection of your gift as a director and, of course, Rebekah's material.
Yes. They always say, like, I went to USC Film School, and the first thing they're like, yeah, don't work with the animals, don't work with water, and don't work with kids. That's, right off the bat, they're just like, don't do these things, because it's going to be a nightmare. And the thing is I've been around kids my entire life on there. And we work with kids in after school programs and stuff like that. So working with kids for us, and of course, we've got 4 kids of our own, and that it's that muscle and skill that has always been there. So for me, it wasn't difficult at all.
And Rebekah, I want to ask you about your writing. You've been known to write 5 books a year. You're currently working on 6 different series, and you write screenplays, and the 2 of you have raised 4 children. How do you find the time to do it all?
I don't sleep.
That's not true.
No, actually, when I started writing, I had been homeschooling my kids. So I have that skill set where I can work on something and then someone comes in and talks to me and I do that with them, and then I go straight back to what I was doing. I take my laptop everywhere, auditions, waiting outside of parkour or violin lessons or whatever it is. And if I can get 5, 10, 15, an hour in, that's how I do it. That's when I do it. Right now I have, I think, 6 or 7 books due before February, plus a script that I am now being contracted to do as well. And it really is just, I write very fast. When I get in the zone, I can write upwards of 10,000 words a day and just go and go. I can get a book done in a month. Editing takes me several months, but I can, for my shorter books, I can get them done in a week or 2. And it just is one of those things where I don't really go out with friends. I don't really go out and get my nails done or get my hair done. I just got my first haircut in almost a year and a half, and they cut off like 6 inches. Those things all kind of wait because they're backseat to my writing. My writing's what I do for me. So, I used to do lots of different kinds of things. I used to sew and have my own children's clothing company and all kinds of different stuff. But I kind of let all of that go because writing is really cathartic for me. And it's, when I'm having a really bad day, somebody's going to die in the book. And when I'm having a really good day, someone's going to fall in love, and that's just kind of how it goes.
James, I got to ask you this. How many nanoseconds did it take after you met Rebekah to know you were in the company of a genius?
Well, that's a very interesting thing. I knew that there was something special about Rebekah far before she ever knew. And, it's taken 23 years of marriage for her to really realize the Wonder Woman that she is. And even she has doubts, days, like we all do, but for her, sometimes probably more than else. And I'm always here as like, no, you're awesome. And that. So, and we need to always surround ourselves as creatives. I find that most creatives also have that doubt side and that. So you need to surround yourself with really good people to hold you up or pick you up on those down days, especially if there's more down days than you normally are used to. And if you do that, like anybody can develop their superpowers. And Rebekah's really developed her superpowers. Like we've become very efficient with our time.
And very productive.
Yes.
Rebekah, you were not known for writing holiday romance novels. Rekindling Christmas was a total departure for you, wasn't it? I've read some of your other books.
It was a total departure. I had been 1 month right before Christmas, I had been watching all these Hallmark romances and thought, well, that might be kind of a fun thing to do. And so I did. I wrote it, and now I teach classes on how to write them. But it's, it's just one of those things where I was like, oh, that sounds like fun. Maybe I should do something like that. And I tried it, and I wrote it, and I was like, hey, I really kind of like this book.
Do you think you'll write more holiday stories in the future?
Yes, I have one that will be coming out that's based off a script that I wrote called Christmas Lodge. It's coming out this Christmas. I have another one, A Family for Christmas. I'm not sure if I'll get that one done by Christmas. It might be a next Christmas, but I'm hoping. I have my Otherworlder series as well, which is paranormal, but they're also holiday romances. That one, Kidnapped at Christmas. I have Vigilante Valentine. Then next month, Massacre at Mardi Gras comes out. And then around Halloween is Hoodwinked at Halloween. So I have those that are more paranormal side of holiday romances. But for contemporary romances, I'm really hoping to do at least one a year, just because they're so feel good and fun, and I really enjoyed it.
The great thing about Christmas movies is that they never grow old. People watch them every year. It must be so gratifying to know that your first collaboration is a movie that will be shown on television every Christmas forever.
Wow. I didn't think about that.
I did when I was watching it. I thought, this couple, I'm so excited to have them on the show. They've knocked it out of the park. They're going to sashay down that red carpet. And it doesn't matter whether you won or not. What mattered was you're in the game. You are on the radar. You did it the first time. It's a great film. I don't know why it took you 23 years to figure out that you're a genius, but you are.
Well, thank you.
And James, your background is pretty amazing too. You were the youngest Boy Scout ever to achieve the rank of Eagle. You've got your securities, insurance, and real estate licenses. You've been a general contractor and a venture capitalist. And I'm told you spent a decade fixing what was wrong in many public and private corporations, including Hewlett-Packard. Is there anything you can't do?
Well, that was one thing. Is my dad, he taught me early on. He goes, listen, James, there is nothing that you can't do or achieve in this life if you just decide you're going to do it. And that was probably the best advice I'd ever been given. When you eliminate all the doubt and the other options and you have decided you're going to do something, anything is possible. And that has stayed with me my entire life, and have done things that people have always said was impossible. And I was like, well, it's only impossible until somebody does it. And there's no reason why you can't just do it.
I get the feeling that your father taught you never to take no for an answer.
Well, yeah, no is really just a not right now. And so you have to figure out, well, what are the variables that need to be in place so it's a yes on there? And maybe it means not them. you know, because some people aren't good for your team, you know, and you've got to find those right team members.
Well, what I find really interesting about you is that with all of that business background, you were ultimately drawn to being a storyteller, and your life partner is a storyteller. Don't you think that's amazing?
I was kind of sold when I saw Star Wars at age 5. At that moment, I was captivated, and I knew it. I was like, the big screen at a drive-in movie theater. I was like, that. I want to do that. whatever it is that they did to do that, that's what I want to do. And eventually ended up there. And when my dad would come home from work, you know, he would say, "Oh, do you want me to read you a story before you go to bed?" And I'd be like, can you actually tell me about your work day and tell me what you did at work? And because I was very curious as to what he did, and he did some amazing things. And so he, you know, I had this love of story early on. And I know part of that was just because of severe dyslexia and not being able to read. And so like I got everything through listening or through watching on there. So I already had a propensity or an affinity towards stories because that's how I gathered all my information about anything.
You know, I love the fact that you've raised 4 kids, because the self-esteem that you were raised with is going to get translated into them. And we want kids to believe in themselves and to feel that they can aspire to whatever goals they have and achieve them.
Yeah, that's one thing we've tried really hard to do, and I've tried really hard to instill in my girls. I was raised by a very strong Jewish mother, and who always, showed me that she was ready to do whatever it took. My grandmother was the same way. My grandmother was 76 years old, out mowing her own lawn and walking, 2-3 miles to work every day. So I was raised in a long line of very strong women, and I really wanted my girls to feel the same way. I wanted them to know they could be whatever they wanted to be. They could do whatever they wanted to do, and I would support them. And James would support them, find what's right for them. I would never force them to do anything. If they said, I want to take ballet, I'd say, great. And I'd put them in ballet lessons. And then 2 weeks in, they'd say, I hate it. It's terrible. And I'd say, that's awesome. You have to finish out what you started. You finish out this semester, and once you're done, if you still hate it, you can stop. But you're never going to be great at everything the first time.
Yeah.
So you have to at least give it enough time to figure out whether or not you really do love it. Our daughter, our 19-year-old, I made her do parkour one day with her younger brother. She was just sitting there. I said, go out there. And she came back crying. She was, I think, 13 or 14 at the time. She hated it. The next week I said, one more time. And she went out there and she liked it a little better that time. And next week she said, can I do it? And I said, sure. And she went out and she really learned to love it. She
dominated it.
She
too.
loved it. And she was the only girl, and she had so much fun. But it's really, teaching kids, you're not going to be perfect the first time. That's okay. It takes time to learn these things. And, I just saw a beautiful quote by Kurt Vonnegut, actually, and where he said, basically, somebody had told him one time, you're not going to be perfect at everything. That's okay. Even if you do things and it's just for the experience of becoming a well-rounded person. You may not be great at it, but at least it makes you more interesting and it makes you more well-rounded. And I just thought that was an amazing thing that I've always tried to live by. You may not be great at everything, but at least you've tried it.
So I'm sitting here thinking about your Jewish mother and mine. Are we going to see a rekindling Hanukkah, or rekindling Rosh Hashanah, rekindling Pesach, anything?
Hallmark did a movie. I cannot for the life of me remember what it was called right now, but it is about a girl who's an Orthodox Jew, and she's married and her husband dies, and then per the law, she's supposed to marry her husband's brother.
Oh, I remember that one.
And it was so beautifully done. And just everything about it was so amazing. And it's not a Christmas movie. It was one of their specialty movies. But I absolutely loved it. And I thought it was so great. And there haven't been a lot of them done. But, just like with the 12 Days of Christmas, you could do the 8 days of Hanukkah and, you know, have something very similar done. And it would be really a neat project to do.
Now, your first novel, Dead Awakenings, is now being developed into a graphic novel, which I think is a fancy way of saying comic book.
It is a little bit of a fancy. The illustrations are a little bit different. They're a little bit more mature. It has more of a storyline, where comic books may have 1 or 2 words per frame. They have quite a bit more. I got the book back from my publisher, and I'm in the middle of edits, the last edits on it, so that I can re-release it. And we've been talking about doing a graphic novel of it. I also have a pilot written for it and 3 seasons arced out, and several more books in the series to come as well.
James, I read that one of your childhood heroes was Clint Eastwood, and you finally got to meet him at the Directors Guild of America Awards. What was that like?
Oh, you know, it's when you have somebody who you've just admired and looked up to, just not just them as a person, but also their career and all of that, and you finally get to meet them, and it's a very surreal moment on there. And of course, he was kind as ever, just you know, the ultimate gentleman, and that. And it was a great opportunity for me. It was like it's watching things kind of full circle on there. It's hard to actually put in words.
Did it occur to you that one day, maybe not too long from now, some young aspiring film student is going to feel that way about meeting both of you?
No. You know,
it's going to happen.
You know, we don't just, you know, do all this stuff for our kids, but we also work with thousands of kids over the last 14 years in like inner city school district. We can't do as much as we used to, but you know, I could see maybe something like that happening, and I see like me not realizing it when it happens. But the idea is to really touch as many lives as you can while you're here, and you know, for the better, and to make the world a better place, and to leave a legacy behind inside of people, because that's a true legacy. Like, it doesn't mean much to have a building, you know, with your name on or whatever, because buildings come, buildings go, names change on them and everything. But to leave an impact on lives that impact other lives, that's a true legacy.
And that's a perfect segue to my question about your next film, No More Goodbyes. It's also written by Rebekah. It's about interracial foster brothers who go on the run to escape the child welfare system. I can't believe the synchronicity of this, because yesterday I interviewed 2 former foster children who ended up meeting each other, getting together, and they've written a book. And here I am talking to you about No More Goodbyes. Rebekah, where did you get your ideas for these stories?
No More Goodbyes was an interesting one. So our son Christian presented the Emmys with Marcus Scribner from Blackish. And Marcus's manager at the time said, you know, these guys would be great in a movie together because they just had such great chemistry. And I just kept thinking, where would a 6-year-old white kid and a teenage Black kid meet and become best friends? And I kept thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. And I just couldn't come up with anything. It just wasn't working. It didn't seem real to me. And then finally, the idea said, what if they were foster brothers who lived in the same house? And I thought, you know, that could actually work, where you have the older foster brother, who's Mark, who's been living with Nana for 8-9 years. Tristan comes in, who's played by my son Christian, at the age of 3, and latches on to Mark as a lifeline. And Mark realizes he has to shape up his life to help take care of this little boy who has PTSD, he's on spectrum, he has anxiety disorder, he has all these issues. And how the 2 of them form a bond so close that it's as close as siblings, if not closer. And they're willing to do whatever it takes to sacrifice for each other. And so what happens to them when their foster mother dies and the system's going to come in and break them up? Well, they do the only logical thing they can do. They run away together. And that's how the idea came. And I wrote the script in a week. it just flowed right out of me. It was absolutely inspired. And then I started shopping it around at film festivals, script festivals, started winning awards on it, and editing it and editing it. And finally came to a spot where I said, this is it. This is the story. We were blessed to find the most amazing Mark that we could possibly find Jaquan Jackson. Love him to death. He was absolutely perfect for the role.
Yes.
And then, of course, our son Christian played Tristan in the movie. The role was written for him originally anyway. And we had so many great people come on board who just absolutely loved the movie and loved the script and wanted to be a part of it.
So how do we get to see this film?
So right now we're in the final stages of post-production on there. A lot of people may not know what that means, but it means that we're doing color correction so that, you know, all of the frames look like they match in that. And we're doing music composition. So you have this wonderful, you know, music throughout there. And then also the sound design. So that's where we have to take all of the production sounds, which means door closings, feet walking, and that has to all be recreated and separated from the dialogue track, because when it gets sent overseas, they delete the dialogue track and replace it with a foreign language. And so you would lose all of your sound on there for all your effects. And so that has to be created. So those things are being done right now. It will be, you know, we'll be submitting to the Sundance Film Festival in September for the festival that would be at the end of January on there. And so we'll go through the festival route, and then once the festival route's done, then, you know, you'll be able to hopefully see it in theaters, or you'll see it, you know, on a major network and that. And we'll probably do some private events before then. So.
I hope you'll consider coming back on our show to promote the film, because I'm a very big supporter of films that deal with the child welfare system.
Awesome. We would love to.
Absolutely.
Are there any projects that you've got going on besides what you've told us that you want to tell us about? Besides the 150 books that Rebekah's going to write in the next month.
We have a couple other projects, but we're not quite allowed to talk about them yet.
As long as you promise to come back when you're ready.
There's another series that, you know, I'm really passionate about that Rebekah's done. It's an Immortal Monster series, and the first one is Dracula on there, and that's one that I'm super excited about doing. And then
Ruthless is another pilot that I've written that I have arced out into 5 seasons that I'm going to start writing the books on that one as well. That one's a lot of fun. It's about a girl who gets kicked out of her house at 16 because she gets pregnant and her dad doesn't like her. And it's a very rich, upper class, wealthy type of society. And she comes back years later when her grandfather dies with a son. And nobody knows who the father is of this son. So all the women in town are worried that their husband is the father of this son, because they don't know who the father is. But you have all these secrets and intrigue, and her father's trying to get her back out of town, and other people don't want her there in town, but she ends up getting stuck in town and she can't leave, and she inherits a huge company, and just, you know, it's kind of, what is it, Dynasty meets Gossip Girl kind of feel to it. So it's really, you know, a backstabby revenge type thing, but there's secrets throughout. Like she comes back because her grandfather dies, and then you find out he was murdered. So it's who murdered grandpa, and she can't leave. And her high school sweetheart's there, but he's married to someone else. And yeah, there's a lot that goes.
All the guys are happy that she's back. All the women hate that she's back. And that's just the first episode.
You know, I was doing some research, James, about Rio Vista Universal. You're the founder and president. It's a film and television development, production, and distribution company. And I'm sitting here listening to Rebekah thinking, I hope your long-term vision is to create a major studio, because you truly are a powerhouse couple. You've got everything you need in terms of talent to create a mega studio.
Thank you.
Don't you think?
Don't fill his head, please.
Oh, wait a minute.
You know,
I'm talking about both of you because you're the one, Rebekah, that's creating the substance.
I've got to thank, some of the writers in the past that I worked with, because I had taken some writers that, they had some talent, but they just they weren't developed. And so I developed them, and they went, from being okay to being really great, but then they would leave. And they would be like, oh, thanks. And I'm like, wait, I invested so much in you and developing you as talent. And I was like, and I talked with Rebekah, and I was just like so frustrated. And I was like, you won't leave me. How about we work together? And now, like, she's just so amazing and writes so fast. I mean,
and so well.
Well, yeah, like for her, she's like, oh, I wrote 3,000 words today, amongst everything else, and I was like, wow, that's awesome. But I think your all-time best day was like 12,000 words on there. And she'll be like, I've got a deadline. Can you take the kids and go somewhere? so it can be quiet when she's on like a crazy, crazy deadline.
That's rare though, because I'm so used to the noise that usually while I'm writing, I'm also watching a TV show, listening to music, and having my kids come in and out and talk to me all the time too. So usually when it's quiet, I'm kind of like, what's happening?
Yeah.
I was conditioned when my kids were little that when they were loud, they were doing fine. When they got quiet, we knew they were doing something they shouldn't. So
we start looking around the house.
Thinking, something's wrong here. It is way too quiet in this house for 4 kids.
They probably put the cat in the dishwasher or something.
Something, yeah. They're always doing something. And if I would call their name and they didn't answer, I knew they were fine. But if they answered right away, I knew they were doing something they weren't supposed to because they were waiting for mom to say their name.
I remember the day of the spray paint.
Well, honestly, I think you should do a reality series about your family.
Oh, please don't talk him into that. He's been trying to get me to do that for years.
No. We've always said no because this is actually our haven. This is one place where at home, we're not in the public eye, just kind of let your hair down to sit, and just do whatever. So
yeah, you've got to have that. And in terms of keeping it real, I know, James, you created an organization called See Me Learn. Can you tell us a bit about that?
We've been working with kids in the after school programs and that. And so, for a while we were in like 3 different counties here in Southern California, and it was taking up about 80% of our time in that. And so we had to scale it back, but we're still doing, about 40, up to 40 schools and that. And we chose to work with, the schools that are kind of inner city and where these kids just don't have the kind of access and opportunity that we're able to bring to them, where, and it's all the things that we love and opportunities we would have loved to have had as kids, whether it be, how to do comic books and creating comic books, or mad science and doing, experiments and that, learning about chemistry and physics and all these great things that are household items. And then, to entrepreneurship and writing, where these kids are, learning how to write at a very young age, and not just, I've got to write an assignment, but they're excited to write about something they're interested in and they want to do, and creating this love of learning that we have and being able to translate that to them and have instant success within an hour, so that they start to realize what other things that I thought were impossible that I can actually do with someone's help on that.
Well, I love the way you've combined creativity, business, and philanthropy. Rebekah, James, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on our show. I have the feeling the world is going to be hearing a lot more about you very soon. And I really do hope you'll come back to our show with every new project, because you're always welcome.
Thank you so much, Harvey. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you. Absolute pleasure.
Our guests have been the Hollywood creative team and power couple, James and Rebekah Ganiere. My name is Harvey Brownstone. Thank you to our producer, Steve Silver. Thank you all for joining us. See you next time.
Remember to subscribe to the Harvey Brownstone Interviews YouTube channel, and be sure to check out more great interviews with Harvey Brownstone on harveybrownstoneinterviews.com.